I want to welcome in our first guest, Hilary Fordwich, the president of Strellmark LLC and a board member of the British American Business Association. Hilary, great to see you.
Pleasure to be here, John.
So, Hilary, this little war of words with Sadiq Khan, will it matter as much as it would have a couple of years ago? Because we've seen some very interesting things happening now with nationalism and populism in the UK. I can't imagine Sadiq Khan is the popular guy he was when he was first elected.
You're absolutely right, John. I would say that Trump has a brilliant streak, as we all know, for deflecting and focusing the media's attention. People have been blowing this up. And, first of all, I think some of his words are somewhat uncouth. He could have just stuck to the fact and the point that, yes, crime in London is rampant. And yes, Sadiq Khan should be focusing there. He's wasting his time focusing on Trump and these silly tweets. These tweets mean nothing. What does mean something is the special relationship. And even though there are a lot of protests, there are protests everywhere that Trump goes, and quite frankly, they actually might make him feel at home. I think that what's important about this visit, John, is the fact that, think about the special relationship. After the Second World War, most Americans know that there was a huge Lend-Lease plan during the war to make sure that all of England and all of Europe wasn't doing the goose step and speaking German. Well, the Russians haven't even come close to paying back what they owed, neither have the French, but the British have paid back every single penny in 2006, the 83 million that was loaned to them. So there's a great relationship. Britain has been a great ally, and at this juncture, when the UK has seen that Macron is not their friend, neither has Merkel, even though, quite frankly, she's been rather moderate, we have seen that the British are standing ready, willing and able. And I think what with now Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage, there is a big prospect for something important to happen during this visit. That's what matters, not silly tweets.
Hilary, just anecdotally, it's interesting you talk about the British-American alliance and how strong it is. I have two friends who were CIA officers out in the field. And one of them, actually, the relationship is so close between British intelligence and our intelligence people.
MI5.
Yeah, and MI6, MI5, correct. One of them actually got in trouble for accidentally bringing a British military intelligence officer into an American skiff. He said, we worked so closely together. I trust him so much that it didn't even cross my mind to check with anybody before I brought him in. And the other, I asked him who was our greatest ally on the battlefield, and he said, the Brits. Hands down, the Brits. He said the Canadians and the Aussies are with him. He said, I felt like I was with my own. When I was with them, they never had another agenda in a war zone. That's very telling when guys who face down death in the field.
It is, and John, you're totally right.
Right?
Yes, think about this, John. You're absolutely right. Think about this. Do you remember in the Gulf War? Remember France wouldn't even let us fly over their airspace?
Yes, exactly.
So remember when French fries, Americans started calling French fries freedom fries?
Freedom fries.
And I don't mean to harp on the French, but it doesn't mean you can pick at any point during history, and obviously there was the War of 1812.
Right.
But in general, yes, Britain has stood by our side and sent boys to die next to our boys.
Yeah, they really, really, really have. It's really been an inextricably linked relationship. All right, Hilary, let's talk about the Queen and Prince Charles. As we sit here today, do they have any political influence for or against Nigel Farage or Boris Johnson, for better or worse, or are they only ceremonial?
Absolutely, they have influence, but it's a dinner soiree outside of Buckingham Palace, and she went to meet with Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson is the American ambassador to the UK.
Yes.
And after that, it was announced that there would be a state visit. Now, what do you think she went for? Just to have an evening out where she could go anywhere in the world, and she doesn't go to dinners outside really of Buckingham Palace, nor does she go to soirees across London. So the Queen is no fool, and the royal family, one thing that is the most important is that the crown endures, and that the royal family endures, and that Great Britain endures. And the way that Great Britain and the UK has been treated by the EU, by Juncker, by Macron.
Yes.
Look, who is the major ally? When she heard that, I am sure, when she heard that John Bolton had said, if the UK, in quotes, crashes out of Brexit, they will crash right into the US. And he reiterated that last Thursday. So after that visit that the Queen had to Woody Johnson, and Woody Johnson is like a fourth generation descendant from the founder of Johnson & Johnson. So most Americans will be familiar with that name. After that dinner soiree, this state visit was announced. I would not be surprised at all, John, if some sort of of huge trade package agreement wasn't made. And who stands to benefit? Every American stands to benefit through the special relationship. American jobs. Americans have 1 million jobs in the UK.
Wow.
There are UK citizens that work in the US, and it is a huge area for a US employment, as well as, I would say, and I don't know the exact percentage, but probably I would say close to more than 95% of American companies that have operations globally, they have an office in London. So Americans are used to being there for business and for travel. It's not just what I think it was it Winston Churchill that referred to us as two countries linked with a common language that divides us. So I think it's a special relationship, business-wise, trade-wise. And what Woody Johnson has said with John Bolton is there can be an arrangement and a trade agreement between the UK, the US, and Canada.
Do you think the Queen gave Woody Johnson any input on who the New York Jets head coach should be? Is she a fan of American football?
Yes, exactly. American football, right.
But let me ask you this.
She's a savvy lady.
Yeah. So Donald Trump, obviously, close relationship with Nigel Farage. Trump's base, they are very supportive of Nigel Farage. They've been for a long time, even before this
They've been
recent
friends,
vote.
yes.
So how much weight does that carry right now in the UK?
Well, the problem, John, is that obviously, just like our politics here in the US, the nation is very polarized. You have obviously many Remainers. You have 17.4 million English people that voted to leave, and predominantly, I say English versus British because they predominantly were in England. Mm-hmm. So you have this huge divide. It is a very polarized nation right now. Something needs to unite the UK. Now, obviously, Trump is very unpopular with many. Many see him as perceive him to be racist, even though, of course, unemployment is at its lowest rate for African Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans, and women in the United States. So those that say he's misogynistic, he certainly has been good for women for business and certainly for minorities. But aside from that, John, yes, he's polarizing. A lot of it, I think, comes, quite frankly, from his uncouth tweets, his mannerisms, and things that I think are unnecessary. They're actually forced errors. And that's a great pity because that puts a lot of people in England and Great Britain and the British Isles in general off. Why does it put them off? Because, you know, manners are held in high regard.
Right.
And the Queen, no matter what anybody thinks of the Queen, the way she comports herself, it's something that everybody can be proud of. It's that sort of degree of pedigree and the deportment which every English person, not every, the majority of the British respect. That is lacking in Donald Trump from their perception.
Well,
so
it's
that's
ingrained in the
against
culture,
him.
right, Hilary? It's woven into the fabric
Yes.
of the culture of the UK. But, you know, that being said, I think media plays a big part. I was sitting with a couple of executives from Poland, and they were here yesterday, actually, at lunch. And I know them. I know them socially, two former military people there. They tried to watch my show. They tried to watch a segment I did on the military and intelligence matters. They're not allowed. It's blocked. It was blocked even in Poland, in the EU, because we discussed conservative politics. I didn't know this until yesterday. On the internet, it was blocked because we discussed conservative politics and firearms issues. Now we find out the president's tweeting that CNN is pretty much the only network outside of the BBC that most in the UK get. So the media is playing a big part in this, right? That they're getting only one, the citizens there are getting only one side of the story.
You're absolutely right. Actually, I will tell you right now, if you Google, because I do obviously a lot of correspondent work for you and some other networks, and I will tell you, John, Google Brexit, and the only responses that come up is that subject matter, or actually any subject matter, Google any issue, you will get the BBC and CNN come up first.
Right.
Try to find NewsMax. It doesn't even appear. You can't find it. Try to get Fox Business News will never come up. Fox will never come up. So regardless of your politics, if you just would like to have a balanced perspective on anything, no, you cannot receive it. So to go back to your point, John, yes. In the UK, I will say RT's on regular television, which you can't get here in the United States. And I will say there's a lot of subjects that they raise, a lot of issues that they cover, which actually, ironically, are more balanced than you can even get from some of our media. I've actually been on that network as well as CNN. I was actually cut off on CNN and somewhat censored when I said something good about Trump's last visit with the Queen, whereas RT, you can speak your mind and they never censor you. So that's another issue that Americans should be very aware of. But let me finish with this point, John. In the UK, the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company, used to be what everybody considered across Europe, across the world, a stable voice of reason. And the BBC is totally and utterly liberal now. And here's a proof point for you. I was in the UK during the last election in 2016, and they covered the Republican convention. They interviewed two men who are totally anti-Trump. You've got thousands of people there, thousands of people pro-Trump. And I actually thought to myself, well, first of all, okay, if you want to have a balanced perspective, good on the BBC, good on them. Let's hear what somebody else has to say. But they didn't cover at all in this particular coverage I happened to see that evening at all why it is that your average American was so pro-Trump. So I think the BBC is out of step with obviously the British public, because just like the American networks, they failed to predict Brexit, just like American networks failed to ever recognize that Donald Trump had any legitimate possibility of becoming president.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more every word you said, and it's happened to me. I had my mic cut twice, Hillary, on CNN, but on RT and TRT, Turkish TV, got into very heated debates as a pro-Trump American conservative. Didn't cut my mic, extended the break to let me finish. Didn't get the same respect on CNN. Hilary Fordwich, always great to see you, Hillary. Thanks so much.
Pleasure, John.